Good to have you on the backstory with Omobola Stephen. I'm the host, Omobola Stephen. On the backstory with Omobola Stephen, we want to shine more light on what has not worked and what will make it work. We focus on topics that are centered on politics and also government, and with other subtopics like the science and technology, society and culture, the environment, and also the economy. We emphasize the importance of us embracing change and transformation, not just in our personal lives, but in the world in general, because all of the changes that we desire in life and in the world generally can only happen if we are ready to begin to have discussions, disruptive yet constructive discussions that's going to pivot these changes that we long for. Now, this is the mission and the focus on the backstory with Omobola Stephen. I am my guest. We are ready to pivot the positive changes you and I need, and also the world need in general, on the podcast as we share disruptive yet constructive mind shift conversations on these topics. Today, I have Katleho Mojakisane, who is the Sustainable Future Coordinator at Tangelic on the backstory with Omobola Stephen. Now we'll be talking about the role of clean energy in advancing social equity on the topic on the podcast. Thanks for joining me, Katleho.
Thank you very much. I'm very delighted to be here with you today.
Thanks for joining me, Katleho. I'm looking forward to a great time. So let's talk first off on the key points to note about what clean energy is and its contributor to the world.
Okay, that is a very interesting question because I realize that not a lot of people are familiar, and it's very important to raise awareness about what clean energy is. And clean energy is essentially ways of getting a source of where we can get sources for heating or for lighting and that we use in our homes, for the basic utilities that we have, but using renewable sources, right? So we have different forms of energy sources. We have things like fuel in terms of coal, charcoal, and other non-renewable sources that we mine. But then as well, we have other sources that are renewable. And this means that these sources do not get depleted over time. A very good example is hydroelectric power. This is energy that comes from flowing water, and this is renewable because it does not run out. Another great example is solar power or solar energy. So this is energy or power that we get from the sun, and so it is renewable because the sun does not run out. So this is what renewable sources of energy are. And we're raising awareness about the importance of using these sources, not only the importance, but we're advocating for, investing in renewable energy so that because it is planet friendly, earth eco-friendly, and because the various entrepreneurial paths that can be curated just by using these sources of energy.
Right now, you are advocating for this kind of energy in the world today. Is because there are so many challenges that is faced in adopting this clean energy. So let's talk on these challenges, especially in developing countries.
Okay, so the main challenges that developing countries face when it comes to adopting renewable energy can either be the lack of infrastructure. So we have seen that in as much as most developing countries, there may be in geographical areas that favor the use of renewable energy, but sometimes the infrastructure is lacking, the funding to, get equipment to obtain that energy so that it is used and essentially converted to power may be lacking. When we talk about solar energy, for instance, many countries, especially on the African continent, lack, solar microgrids. They're very difficult to find. In Lesotho, for instance, where I come from, you'd find out that we have to import all of the materials used for in order to generate solar power. So I would say that infrastructure is one of the key elements that is actually lacking for these areas. And, for resources such as water, for instance, some areas, they may be battling with, even if they have water, but they don't have the equipment to, generate electricity, or the governance in that area is not prioritizing, generation of water using renewable sources. So those are some of the key challenges that countries, especially developing countries, face when it comes to, the generation of energy or power using renewable sources.
But really, Katleho, don't you think politics has a lot to do with this development?
It definitely does, Omobola. It definitely does because, at the end of the day, the government wants to do what is quote unquote profitable to either the people who are in power, who want to gain, selfish profit, or, and so it would be that they wouldn't if they make money by selling non-renewable sources like mining coal, and all the other sources that pollute the environment, then they wouldn't necessarily formulate and implement policies that are favoring the generation of renewable sources. So that is how, the governance plays a role in adoption of these uh, different ways of energy adoption. But I realized that more African countries, or more countries rather, are really, leaning towards clean energy. We're talking about, uh, meetings such as COP. We're talking about several discussions that are being held where, really different activists are raising awareness about the need for renewable sources of energy and sustainable development.
All right. So what do you think are the implications of the clean energy transition, if there is?
I think the implications of clean energy transition would be sustainable economies, in the sense that, when there's an adoption of clean energy, for example, as a company at Tangelic, for instance, when we now work to provide communities with clean cook stoves and solar microgrids and other elements that they can use to generate power, we also empower other aspects of their lives that they can use, for example, the clean cook stoves to cook in their entrepreneurial ventures to now sell. We're also empowering, students to, study better. In that way, we're actually empowering them to be better professionals as well. So these are some of the implications of the clean energy transition. We're also, unlocking new ventures for investments, and we're trying to see how, that we can all benefit from this transition.
So you mentioned on Tangelic, but I'd like us to talk a bit about your experience at Tangelic. The mission of Tangelic really is to create impactful, scalable solutions for a cleaner future. So how do you foresee the success of providing local solutions for the global challenge?
Yes. So Tangelic, like you've rightly said, is an award-winning nonprofit organization that is dedicated at addressing energy poverty and climate change across Africa. And it is committed to doing so through community empowerment, gender equity, and sustainable development. Now, these are very important key roles, or key elements to actually take note of, because by doing this, we're going to be doing this through, many different projects. And one such project will be the Sunrise Spectrum Initiative. And this will be where we empower communities with clean energy access through solar home systems, clean cook stoves, and community solar microgrids. And then also we'll be having what we call the Ghana Clean Energy Entrepreneurship Incubator. And here we'll be fostering the next generation of clean energy leaders by providing mentorship, training and seed funding to young entrepreneurs. And another project we're going to be pioneering is the Pan-African Climate Exchange. And in this project, we'll be driving continent-wide climate action through knowledge sharing, collaboration, and innovative financing mechanisms. So the success of these projects would really go a long way in boosting the economic you know, muscle of the communities that we're going to be reaching out to. And this is, what is going to be unfolding as we continue to advocate for clean energy transition.
All right, good to know. Thanks for that. So we talked about sustainable future. How can we begin to build a sustainable future through partnerships? Now, I'm talking about the private sector, the NGOs and government. In order for us or the society in general to begin to advance sustainably, gender equity and also clean energy initiatives globally. Do you have your insight? I know you have. You can share.
Yes, so there are different ways that, we can ensure that there is the sustainability rather, as we develop, especially developing countries such as the African countries. And one key way to do so is through sustainable partnerships, right? So where when governments are more open to forming public when they're more open to forming partnerships with organizations that have the intent to actually reach out to communities and create meaningful change, when they implement policies that favor these organization goals, or when they actually create or they divert part of the funding to actually ensure that it's easier for these grassroots organizations to penetrate communities, how they can support them. And these strategic partnerships would really play a key role. Another key role would be to emphasize the importance of corporate social responsibilities among the private sector companies specifically, emphasizing the need for, okay, we need more initiatives catered towards addressing poverty, as opposed to perhaps a company that would say prioritize entertainment or other, So by raising awareness and advocating for the fact that maybe corporate social responsibility projects or the funding from corporate social responsibility should actually be diverted to actually solving problems that a country is facing, that will help to boost its growth, alleviate poverty, and mitigate other pressing social issues that such a country is facing.
So how do you think the developing countries or the advanced countries, how do you think they can come in to support this vision for the underdeveloped or the developing countries, especially Africa?
I think the best way that at first I would like to say that I don't normally say that maybe yes, through partnering and so on and so forth, we can do it, but we have to really be emphatic by saying that Africa is the one that will be responsible to take it to where it wants to be, right? So I don't like placing emphasis on saying, oh, developing countries should do this and do this for Africa, because we've seen how that has failed. We've seen, for instance, how the cutting of the USAID and cutting from funding from different government, how that has made many developing countries to be dependent on developing countries, on developed countries rather. So I just want to say that what I would advocate for personally would be for more partnerships between African countries to, improve their trade relations with one another, to ensure that there's sustainable trade partnerships going on between them, and to ensure that there are policies that are implemented or, more dependence or more interdependence on one another, as opposed to countries that are already developed. So I just want to say that the developed countries, could also maybe chip in to help with things like how maybe I would say guiding the professionals in the developed countries in terms of, okay, when we drafted such a policy to get from stage 1 to stage 2, this is what we did. So maybe training programs, and, other things that actually empower developed countries or professionals from developed countries, as opposed to maybe aid that, yes, can solve the problem, but is not really sustainable in the long run.
All right. Can we talk a bit about innovation for a sustainable Africa? We emphasize Africa because we know Africa has its own core issues that is facing, that is being challenged with on a daily basis. So, what do you think African communities, what do you think they really need a tailored innovation as regards clean energy and sustainable energy? What do you think, or what have you found out?
Okay, so I believe that, innovation, we at a very small scale, I'm just going to say that everybody wants how they means to feed their families, ways to make more money. So innovation is tied in a lot with entrepreneurship. And by actually encouraging entrepreneurship, we're encouraging innovation. This is why, for instance, through the Ghana Clean Energy Entrepreneurship Incubator that Tangelic will be doing, where we'll be fostering, clean energy leaders who have startups that generate power using renewable energy, where we, connect them with mentors, connect them with people who can fund their businesses, so on and so forth. They're now inspired to come up with innovative ideas, groundbreaking ideas that can take Africa from where it is today to the next level. And this ties in very much with what we're talking about how, different sectors of the African countries should actually form more collaborations. And by following what is happening in the African Union, I'm very pleased to see that there's a lot that is actually, going on there in that direction. So when we do this, encourage entrepreneurship and innovation, we're actually solving the problem that Africa greatly faces, which is the stunted economic growth that we see. So that is what I would say with regards to innovation.
All right. Katleho, you have really provided your insight on this topic of discussion. So we like to talk about the women and also leadership, especially as regards to clean energy. Now, we understand that energy access has been demonstrated to improve gender equality. Now, the question in the minds of my audience is, why are the women not fully involved at the heart of this transformation? So I'd like us to talk about gender equity and how empowering women in the sector can drive innovation and progress towards global sustainability goals.
Okay, that is a very important question because not only in the just energy transition do we see a small representation of women, but actually at even policy making level or on tables where decisions are being made, we're still advocating that we want to see more women there. So that is really where the problem is, because when the people that are responsible for making these big decisions about who to give tenders to, who to give certain funding to for such a project, it stems from there. So when we deal with the problem from the root source, which is the leadership of many developing countries, many African countries, that is when, we'll actually be getting to something. And that is why maybe we may not see more representation of women in many spaces, including in the energy space, right? But by Tangelic pioneering these initiatives and raising the need for more women representation in these causes, we're actually trying to, mitigate this problem that we're talking about. And for instance, we know that because of the gender roles culturally for many African countries, you'd find out that in Ghana, for instance, where we're reaching out to, the women are the ones responsible for collecting firewood, cooking, doing this, doing that. So you get to find out that during all these processes these domestic activities that they do, they're not active economically, they're not active when it comes to being educated, so they cannot make those sound decisions that actually place them in places where they're able to be at policy making tables or corners and stuff like that. So by carrying out this initiative, we will be empowering women because we're giving them access to clean energy solutions. By doing so, if instead of going to fetch firewood, a person now has a clean cook stove to use, saves time, and also impacts their health positively because when they use firewood, for instance, they get to experience a lot of respiratory illnesses and, things like that. So when they now use this, it saves them time. It also gives access to those little girls in school who maybe didn't have, light to use to study and, other activities related to this their education. And also we're ensuring that in the implementation of these projects, there is a considerable, a significant representation of the female gender. And our message, our narrative is really women empowerment through the advocacy for climate justice and climate action. So these are some of the reasons why we don't see a lot of women that I have already stated, and these are some of the ways that we're hoping to mitigate these problems.
Absolutely. Don't you think that we need to emphasize education, proper education in this regard? And also, who are your target audience? I'm talking about the women. Who are the target audience?
Okay, so the issue of education is very important, and this is why I specifically mentioned it, that when women do not have access to education, they are therefore not informed to, make the right decisions or be in spaces where they're likely to influence policy making, or they're likely
Okay,
to
so
be.
how can you begin to educate them? How can education get to this set of people?
Through advocacy, not only through advocacy, but through actually actively ensuring that these women are empowered. When you talk about entrepreneurship, for example, for those that are not vested, those are not well versed with maybe what is entrepreneurship? How do I pitch to an investor? How do I get into this energy sector? When you provide mentorship to these women, when you provide trainings for those that maybe they're now out of high school or they didn't go to high school, but they're older, and you provide entrepreneurial training, these are some of the ways that we can, try to mitigate or bridge the gap between the male and female representation in relevant spaces.
All right. So do you have any sites that they can visit in order for them to access this important information? And also, I'd just like you to tell me your the target audience for this set of people in terms of the clean energy. You're looking at the women. Where are they located?
Okay, that is a very great question. So these women that we're looking for are particularly in the global south. Our pilot projects, however, will be taking place in Ghana, specifically in Tamale. So because of the geographical location and the legislative, laws there that favor clean energy transition, that is where our pilot projects will be taking place. And we're looking for young women, especially those who are into entrepreneurship. These are the people that we'll be serving. But more vastly, will also be outside the scope of the women. We'll also be targeting specifically less privileged communities. So obviously this includes men as well. So the less privileged or the impoverished communities that cannot afford access to clean energy, all of these people are our target market or audience rather, and these are the people we'll be reaching out to. So for our viewers listening and would like to learn more about how Tangelic is going to go about what it's doing and to keep updated, they can visit www.tangeliclife.org to see how they can be part of this change to actually bring about sustainable development in this regard.
All right. Do you have any important information, perhaps any projects in the pipeline that you think the audience of the backstory can benefit from now or in the subsequent nearest future? You can share if you have any.
Okay, so for now, the projects that are, in the pipeline to be implemented in the subsequent future is the Sunrise Spectrum Initiative, the one that I mentioned before, firstly, and this is where we'll be empowering communities with clean energy access through the donation of solar home systems, clean cook stoves, and community solar microgrids. So, we're not only reaching out to, say, people who can benefit, but we're also reaching out to people who can partner, people who can contribute to making this change. So we're calling on any prospective organizations to, form strategic partnerships to, see how we can work together towards the completion of this goal.
Good to know. Thank you once again, Katleho, for sharing that. We sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, on behalf of the audience of Backstory to Omobola Stephen, I wish you best of luck in this project that you are embarking upon, and also in subsequent ones that you will embark upon at the Tangelic. Thank you once again for sharing your thoughts, especially on the role of clean energy in advancing social equity. We value your time and also the positive contributions you've had on the show and impacting the audience in general. Best of luck once again, Katleho.
Thank you so much, Omobola. It was a delight to be here today.
Delight to have you once again. And if you'd like to catch up with any missed episodes of the Backstory with Omobola Stephen, you can do so on any podcast distribution platforms or any podcast promotion platforms. Just search for the Backstory with Omobola Stephen. We focus on government and politics and other subtopics like the society and culture. We also have science and technology, the environment, and also the economy. We focus on disruptive yet constructive mindship conversations on topics that is going to pivot the changes that we need in the society and in the world in general. Till I come your way, I need you to stay safe. Thank you once again, Katleho, for your time. You have
Thank
a
you
great
so
time.
much. Thank you so
All right.
much. All right.